Hi, guys. I'm here to talk to you about the political reforms that happened during the progressive movement. What do I mean by political reforms? These are any changes that had to do with the government. So remember, the progressive movement is going to try to fix the problems that came from the mass industrialization, immigration, and urbanization of the late 1800s. One of those problems had to do with corrupt political machines, such as Boss Tweed, one of your Quizlet terms from chapter 18. Remember, he was kind of taking bribes and controlling city politics, including Tammany Hall in New York City. So, one way progressives try to fix that is by expanding democracy, increasing voter participation. This could be done through the secret ballot. No longer would people be forced to take a ticket with the party boss's choices. They could exercise their right to vote in private. Another way to increase voter participation and kind of deter the power of the city bosses was through direct election of senators or direct primaries, no longer having just state controlled legislatures that were kind of, again, influenced by party bosses determining who the nominees or the actual senators would be. Robert La Follette, one of your Quizlet terms, he was a powerful governor of Wisconsin, very progressive governor that tried to also expand democracy and make it more responsive to the people by pushing for direct election of senators, trying to break up railroads, things like that. Also, at the state level, we have initiative, referendum, recall taking place at certain states as progressives achieved these victories by, again, making the government more responsive to the people, because now with initiative, voters in those states could propose a law. Voters could then vote on them with a referendum, or voters could take out bad politicians with a recall. So all of these trying to make the government more responsive to the people. Again, a lot of these changes happened at the more local or state level. And Robert La Follette is a great example of that progressives weren't necessarily a national movement. A lot of them were more grassroots. That's how progressivism kind of started. And then it emerged into more of a national movement, especially once Teddy Roosevelt became president. He was the voice of a lot of these kind of local grassroots movements. Another way to kind of expand democracy was fighting for women's rights to vote. And so there were a lot of famous suffragists. Remember Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott, who organized Seneca Falls Convention in 1848. Now they kind of passed the baton to Susan B. Anthony. And then you have other famous suffragists like Alice Paul and Carrie Chapman Catt that are going to work really hard to get women the right to vote. Susan B. Anthony even gets arrested for trying to exercise that right to vote. So there were a lot of parades, a lot of marches at this time. Here you can see some more protests. Women continue to not have the right to vote in the midst of World War I, as this woman is demanding President Wilson give them the right to vote finally. A lot of people were against giving women suffrage or the right to vote because they felt that either women were not smart enough, and so entire organizations were created to try to stop women from getting the right to vote, or they were worried that once women got the right to vote, that could be a slippery slope to other things, that would men be left caring for the children, and this could just be bad. Ultimately, in 1920, women do get the right to vote, finally, in every election in every state. Although in some states, as you can see from this map, they did have suffrage prior to the 19th Amendment, but the 19th Amendment guaranteed it now for every state and every election moving forward. Moving on from the solution of expanding democracy or increasing voter participation, we have a muckraker by the name of Upton Sinclair, who wrote a book called The Jungle, which is a Quizlet term that was published in 1906 that was based on his experience monitoring the Chicago stockyards, where a lot of cows and pigs were being slaughtered and then sent out to the public to consume. And so in his book, this is a passage from it in which he talks about the sausage that was being made in these stockyards. And he would say the sausage came back from Europe that was rejected. It was moldy and white. It'd be doused with borax and glycerin and dumped into the hoppers made again for home consumption. Lots of rats would be present in these stockyards. The rats, he says, were nuisances, and the meat packers would put out poison bread for them. They would die, and then rats, bread, and meat would all go into the hoppers together. So there are lots of different disgusting things that made it into the sausages, just as an example, that Upton Sinclair kind of exposes in his muckraking book, The Jungle. So this is going to prompt progressives to be disgusted and demand change. And so here you can see some photographs of just this unsanitary food. And it got so bad that actually even some European countries refused to buy the meat from the United States. You can see just there's no regulations here. And so that's what progressives, and including even in some medicines, that people weren't always being told what was in their medicine. It might be cocaine or even heroin in some of these medicines. And so progressives are going to demand the government now to step up and do more to regulate food and drugs. And so we're going to get something called the Meat Inspection Act, which we still have to this day. That, of course, is the government now regulating our meat, making sure that it is not having rat poison bread and so forth churned up into it. And we have the Pure Food and Drug Act that's passed at this time. Again, still around to this day. When you go and, for instance, you look on your toothpaste, it'll say FDA approved. Anything that is destined for human consumption has to be approved by the FDA. And so they're going to make sure that nothing is adulterated in your food and drugs, and that everything's being labeled properly. Another separate problem from the lack of food sanitation is that the environment was being destroyed. We talked a little bit about this first semester. Remember, John Muir was a Quizlet term. Here he is pictured in Yosemite Park in California with Teddy Roosevelt, who will be probably the most progressive president that we have. And he is going to draw attention again to just the flagrant logging and no system of regulation that was really going on at the time as more and more people were pouring out west. Teddy Roosevelt loved the outdoors, and so he is really going to do a lot to try to protect the environment. The Forest Reserve Act was already passed by the time he takes office in 1901, but he is going to use it to really set aside a lot of land. Over 150 million acres of land are set aside as part of the Forest Reserve Act. He creates the National Forest Service. During his time, the Antiquities Act is passed, which is going to allow the government now to set aside land for historic landmarks. He'll use that to protect the Grand Canyon. So he does a lot for, again, trying to protect the environment. So what do all of these progressive movement political reforms have in common? Hopefully you're seeing a trend here that in all of these cases, the government is taking a much more active role, whether it be getting more people involved in government, like increasing voter participation, whether that be regulating food or protecting the environment. The government is taking a much more active role in these different areas. So hope that helps, guys, and have a great rest of your day.